Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Jim Orr. Welcome to the show, Jim. How are you?
I'm fine, Paul. Thanks for asking me.
We've come off the back of 2 defeats. The last time you were here was Friday of last week, of course. We've gone into the first Glasgow derby of the season, 2-0. And then last night, the first Europa League group game against AC Milan, 3-1 defeat. So let's have a wee chat about those 2 results as we head in to Pittodrie on Sunday, Jim. Lots of big questions to be answered, I think. I mean, when you look at last night's performance, do you believe it was a big enough improvement on Saturday, first and foremost?
I think it was obviously better than Saturday, and obviously a week's a long time in football. This time last week we're sitting here thinking, well, we'll win the Glasgow derby, we go 2 points clear, win the game in hand, we're 5 points clear, and off we go to 10 in a row. But obviously things have went backward a little bit. But in terms of last night was a little bit better. We're playing a team who are several levels above us in class, so you have to always remember that. You know, they're faster to the ball, they're better players than we have. But I thought the first 15 minutes looked okay, and then we lose a daft goal, another daft goal, where we need to stop losing daft goals. That's number one. Another daft goal just before half time. Lenny did the right thing this time, put on a couple of subs at half time. Thought we played a wee bit better the second half. I thought they took the foot off the gas a little bit, took their star man off the park, and that was an indication that I think they thought the game's won. We get the goal back, and it's quite interesting for the last 10 minutes or so, and then we lose another kind of sloppy goal. Understandable since we're pushing the game, but with a couple of wee set pieces towards the end of the game that, with a better delivery, who knows, we might have sneaked something. But I think end of the day the better team won, and no complaints. But I think the thing we learnt last night was maybe going back to the 4 at the back, maybe that's the way to go.
Well, that's really been something that's been key in the last couple of defeats, Jim. It's been the defensive frailties of Celtic, and I don't think there were many people who were sad to see Shane Duffy coming in. I mean, that there was a whole furore over Duffy's arrival at Celtic. We spoke about it on this podcast. Everybody was happy. We can't change what was said at the time, but in the last couple of games, he's looked a bit suspect, Jim, now.
I think you have to get to the reason for that, Paul.
Yeah.
And is it the shape of the team? Is it the fitness of the guy? He's not played many games before this. There's just too many games coming in quick succession. I think he would look better in a back 4. And I think if we're going to pin our hopes on him to keep the defence together, if we keep playing in a back 3, that's going to expose him. So I think going with a 4 from now on. I think Lenny has to figure out what's the best shape, what's the best formation, what's the best team, and then you just stick to it. And I think he's been unfortunate again. I mean, I think we can all, obviously after last week's defeat, social media was in meltdown in terms of what should be happening next, get rid of the manager, etc, etc. But I think the number of players that were out last week in terms of Edouard and Christie and Beaton and El Hamed all down to COVID. You've got Forrest missing, Julian's injured, Lee Griffiths isn't 100% fit. And that's an issue. Why is he not 100% fit 3 months into the season? So we'd quite a few players down last week. And I think I said to you before we went on air there that if you actually split last week into 3 and look at it, what happened before the game, what happened in the first half, what happened in the second half. In the first half, in terms of the team, you and I sat here last week and we picked the same team, I think. We both had Lee up front and Big Julian at the back. And you made the point that maybe Patrick Klimala's the only fit guy we've got. So Lenny plays Patrick Klimala on the assumption he's the only fit guy we've got. Big Julian's injured. He plays a young boy Welsh at the back to keep the shape. So from my point of view, I thought that's an okay team. Possibly from your point of view, it's an okay team. And a lot of Celtic fans would have thought that's an okay team. So I can't really criticise the manager for picking that team. You look at the first half, and if the game had finished at half time and we'd have lost 1-0, it was a completely nothing game. Nothing happened in the first half at all. Neither goalkeeper had to make a save. There was 2 incidents. That's all that happened in that whole first half. First one that One would assume the management who had told the players not to give away any soft free kicks or corner kicks, and we give away a kind of daft free kick, because we know that their strength is balls in from the wides, whether it's Tavernier or Barisic. So we give away a silly free kick. The ball comes in the box. You mentioned Shane Duffy. He's the guy we're pinning our hopes on. He's there for those games. He's not there for the Hamilton games or the Tony Macaroni Stadium or whatever. Those are the games he's in for. And by his own admission on social media after, he didn't have a good game. So he should have cut that cross out. And then you could maybe put some blame on the goalkeeper as well. Whether he just saved it or not, maybe could have made a better effort towards it. So you give away a daft foul, your centre half's all over the place, and your goalkeeper could have done a bit better. You can't blame Lenny for that, because he'd be tearing his hair out watching that. And then the other big incident is they make a mistake and Mo Elanusi's 15 yards from goal. So if it was you or I in that position, we'd have maybe skied the ball 10 yards over the bar. And that's what he did. And that annoys the hell out of me when I see things like that, because he's there in training every day. And I don't know how old is Mo, maybe in his mid-20s.
Yeah.
You know, however many years he's been doing this every week, been coached, so that when he's in that position, that he has the composure, the skill, the temperament, whatever, just to, you know, get the ball on target and make the keeper work. And what did he do? He did what you or I would do. He put the ball 10 yards over the bar. You can't blame Lenny for that. So he's tearing his head out. So as far as I'm concerned, if the game had finished at half time, would have been disappointed losing 1-0 in a completely nothing game. But the big concern was the second half, and the big concern was the fact that there was no substitutions at half time. Because I think I said a couple of weeks ago that one of the big advantages we've got this season we didn't expect is 5 subs. Didn't expect that. And for the team the size of Celtic in the Scottish League, I think every game we should be putting on 2 subs at half time. Irrespective of the score, I'd put on 2 subs at half time. Why is my logic behind that? Is because under normal circumstances, I think most managers don't make a change maybe till after about an hour, and they might make 1 or 2 substitutions, and they'll keep maybe the third guy back just in case there's an injury, and maybe stick him on in the last 15 minutes. You can stick 2 subs on at half time and still do that. So if you're winning the game quite easily, then give other players a good 45 minutes. Rest 2 players for 45 minutes. Because the thing about being a sub, and you know this yourself, Paul, having played football, you hate being a sub.
I thought you were going to say that you know this yourself because you're a sub. Cheers for that, Jim.
Maybe you were always a sub, who knows? But you know, having played football when you were younger, when you were younger, when you played football, if you were a sub, you've been spending all week looking forward to this game, and you're a sub, and you know you're only get maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So if you're a player, and obviously you're getting well paid to do that, but you still feel the same. You're only getting 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you guarantee a lot of your players 45 minutes no matter what, that would make me a wee bit happier. So even if you're winning convincingly, bring on a couple of subs. If you're not playing particularly well, then you should be bringing on a couple of subs. You know, so I think that's a weapon or an opportunity we should be using a lot more, irrespective of, you know, winning well or losing badly. So we should have brought in a couple of subs at the start of the second half last week. We lost the goal after, there was another 9 minutes again. I thought that was quite a good move they had down their right hand side. Some nice play, decent cross. I thought Duffy did really well to block the first one, because he dived in the block the first one, and then a wee bit of luck from their point of view, just, you know, bounces around and they score the second goal. But after that, it was just a shocking performance in terms of the attitude of the players. The manager didn't change things. I don't know what the coaching staff were doing. It was just abject. The whole thing.
You're talking about subs, Jim. One of the biggest aspects, and we won't labour the fact we're trying to connect Saturday's game to last night so that we can then look forward to Sunday. But really, if you're David Turnbull with 6 minutes to go, I think it was a disappointment for him, of course, but it was also a disappointment for us as Celtic fans. You know, the signing of Turnbull was a long drawn out process because of what happened to the young man with the injury. Fought back from it. We've been looking forward to seeing him. He's a really exciting prospect in Scottish football, and we've only seen him fleetingly. But you know, he's a guy that is creative. You know, he is creative, both individually to create a chance for himself or for his teammates. That's the type of player that we wanted on the park, because we were missing, of course, Ryan Christie, who I believe is the most creative player we've got. We leave it till 6 minutes to go at 2-0 down, and then bring him on with no chance for him to actually change the game.
I think it's difficult again because of how many good players we actually do have. We've got a really good squad. It'd be different if, you know, we didn't have much of a squad and we get more game time. I think last night maybe was an opportunity, because I don't think, certainly I didn't have any expectation last night of getting anything. And when they scored after, what was it, 13, 14 minutes, something like that, I'd have gladly stopped the game then. Just blow your whistle. I'll take a 1-0 defeat, because losing the goal that early, you're thinking, given the confidence a wee bit low just now, this could be 4, 5, 6, and that's the last thing we want to happen. But I thought the team did reasonably well to come back into it. Didn't get hammered and made a game of it in the second half. But we brought in Tom Rodgick. I mean, Rodgick's an excellent player. So if you're up against Tom Rodgick, and I take all the points on board that we bought the guy, let's maybe try and play the guy. Tom Rodgick did really well. So it's hard to criticise. He brought somebody on who actually.
Well, the substitutions turned out really well last night, Jim.
I also think it's hard because of what we've talked, because of the 10, and we spoke again just before going on air about the 10 dwarfs everything. So the 10 will kind of influence Lenny's thinking, and we need to keep winning games, and that's why he tends to go for the tried and tested, experienced guys, and he doesn't throw younger guys, because he's a young guy at the end of the day, and there's loads of pressure on this season, and come this Sunday, there's just like that's ratcheted up another huge factor in terms of Sunday.
Let's talk about pressure then, because looking at today's conference with Neil Lennon, he said, I need a performance and a win. And he went on to say that we will come back stronger than ever. Now, obviously the pressure of being the Celtic manager is omnipresent, Jim. Lennon knows this because it's his second time in charge. He knows what's involved. He knows the magnitude of the job that 10 in a row entails. Is he the man to deal with the pressure? Now, what I mean by that is there's been loads of comments, and we take a lot of the comments on board and we discard a lot of the comments, because on the Bulletin, for example, after the game last night, literally hundreds of comments coming in, and I invite them. I want to engage with as many Celtic supporters as possible. If fans of other clubs come in with something that's balanced, great. But obviously there has to be a period of monitoring the comments, which unfortunately falls on my plate. So I'm having to do that as well. And there's a lot of absolute nonsense coming in. I've got to say, not generally from Celtic supporters, thankfully. So you're dealing with all that, but you're looking also at the pressure that Neil Lennon has put up with through his career. The situations that he dealt with as a player, we know they were unacceptable as a player, Jim, and we know why. He was subject to that. And then as a manager, particularly first time round, the abuse, the attacks, the threats, bullets in the post, we know that level of pressure is horrific. And has anyone ever had to deal with something like that in the history of the club? Well, the answer is no. This is a different type of pressure, Jim, but we know that Neil Lennon can deal with pressure. Is he able to deal with this? Is he able to deal with the expectation of the whole Celtic support, the PLC, the club, the players, everybody around the club? Is Lenny dealing with that?
I think winning the 10 is within his hands. He's actually the only person responsible to try and deliver this 10, and that's an awesome responsibility. And as fans, we spend far too much time, literally every waking minute, trying to figure out what we should be doing next. And he's got the burden themselves in terms of the team he picks, the shape of the team, etc., etc. It's not been going so well the last week. The performances maybe haven't been that great, but as long as he was winning 3 points, if I was a manager and my team go out and win 3 points, and I'm not interested in what people have to say, because I've achieved my objective. And you could be saying to me, well, maybe your performances should be better, maybe you should have done this, maybe you should have done that. And maybe if I had done that, we wouldn't have got 3 points. So I don't think you can argue with a manager who delivers 3 points every game. They've achieved their objective. I think when you don't deliver the 3 points, then you can then question some of the stuff. And I think what you're looking for is an understanding as to why. What's happened in the last week? What's actually caused this? Why have the performances not been as good as they could have been? Well, there's loads of players missing. So there's one big obvious thing. Edouard is the most talented player in the country by a mile, and he's not playing. He wasn't playing particularly well before he had to withdraw because of COVID. But, he's missing. He's our main guy. Julian, who was awesome at the back last year, he's injured. I think you mentioned before, but we couldn't get Fraser Foster back. And he's such a big influence. I'm not saying anything against the goalkeeper we've got just now, but he has a huge influence on that team. So we need to understand why things haven't been going as well as they could have been, and what action is Lenny taking to actually make that better. And if he's taking the right action to make things better, then I think he's still the man to lead us forward. And he'll be able to deal with anything that comes of it. Given what he's had to deal with over the last 20 years, he can deal with anything. But it's an awesome responsibility. Because we're sitting here just now, and as I said, most Celtic fans will be thinking, we've got a game on Sunday, who's he going to play? What if we lose it? What's going to happen next? So we are thinking all the time, we're overthinking all this kind of stuff. What must he be like? Because he's the guy that's going to make or break the 10. I just think it's an awesome responsibility that we've got absolutely no conception of. It's just... We don't. It's just, I mean, in terms of, this is I was going to say, once in a lifetime, once in a ever, historical stuff. Chances are this will never happen again. It's historical, and it's in his hands. Imagine that being in your hands. It's up to you, and you're having thousands or tens of thousands of people telling you what to do. That's wrong, do this. And the people that are telling them what to do have never managed a team in their life. They're guys like you and I who are enthusiastic amateurs, and we think we know a wee bit about the game. But if you're winning, I don't think you can say too much. But if you start losing, I think it's perfectly valid to ask some questions. Last night didn't bother me at all. They are, as I said earlier, several levels above us. If we took anything from that game, it'd have been fantastic. But I expected us to lose. As long as we didn't lose by too many, that was fine. We're going to Aberdeen on Sunday. We're a better team than Aberdeen. We've got better players, and we should win. Then again, we said that about last Saturday, and didn't quite pan out. But I think we've got a real challenge this year, and we need to rise to the challenge and get back to playing the way we can play. And we need to figure out, or Lenny needs to figure out, what's the best shape to suit the players that he's got. If you're going to play Shane Duffy, then you can't play three at the back, because that doesn't suit him. If you want the best at Shane Duffy, then I think you have to play four at the back. Who do you pair with him? I think obviously at the moment Bagaya.
Yes.
If Julian's fit, who do you play? Well, that's a question for me.
There's a dilemma. Yeah. There's actually a dilemma that we'll talk about, Jim. Now you're talking about shape, and we'll definitely get onto that, because it will be interesting to see whether Lennon looks at last night's performances and when things started getting better with a change in shape, if he's going to continue with that. And like you say, the Shane Duffy scenario with regards to him coming in as the pivot, and certainly in the last couple of games, him looking to be the weak point in that defence, which, it's unusual when you're looking at someone who he's coming in from a very high level down in England. He's the international captain of the Republic of Ireland. And I think we all, a huge majority of us, pinned our hopes on Shane Duffy to come in and make everything better at the back.
Absolutely, but I think you've also got to think about, if he's not used to playing in the back three, straight away then he's not sure where he goes, pushes up, pushes back, where he goes. The last two games, he's played with a young boy Welsh beside him. This is a young guy, how old is he, 21, 22, something like that, who's maybe played one game before for Celtic. So he's got to keep an eye on him as well, and try and make sure he does the right things. So he's doing two things. He's trying to play his own game. He's trying to shepherd the young boy through the game. He's got one of the biggest football icons in front of him last night, and he's playing three at the back, which he might not be used to doing. So again, those are factors, and that's a bit about saying, well, we need to understand, we need to get to the point, why isn't Shane Duffy playing as well as he should be playing? What's the answer to that question? And once you get the answer to the question, then you need to change it to try and make it better. If he doesn't change it to make it better, things will get worse. And then you can ask legitimate questions of the manager to say, well, you should have done that and didn't do it. And if you're not doing that, then things are going to get worse. And we all know that Celtic are only ever, one defeat away from a crisis. We've had two in the last week, and as we said before, we can't remember the last time we did that.
I can't remember 90s. Certainly the last time we went three. Someone might be able to tell us, Jim, who's listening in, when was the last time? And by the way, I'm not having us defeated at Pittodrie before a ball's kicked. But you're absolutely right. What happens directly after a game, Jim, is we always go live. So myself, normally with two others, we go live, and what you're getting is the raw reaction of Celtic supporters who obviously indulge in this game of football like it's, a life or death scenario. So you're getting the raw emotion. You then get the opportunity, Jim, to think about it a wee bit and then come back the following day, and that's where we are just now. But there was comments last night about Shane Duffy, and my esteemed colleague Kevin likened him to Daniel Mistorovic. Now, I'm not ready to write off Shane Duffy. What I would maybe say, and I did say it this morning on Twitter, is that I'm not convinced that Shane Duffy's 100% fit. People may obviously normally say, well, why is he playing? The reason he's playing is because we've got a bit of defensive crisis at the moment. And actually, it's credit to him if that is the case, Jim, and he continues to play on. We've seen it in the past. We've seen Bruni doing it for Celtic, whereby he just continually plays through injury. And, you know, whilst you would love every player on the park to be 100% fit, I don't think Duffy is. And I think that's maybe one of the issues. Also, he's been thrown into 3 games a week. And he's come out of, you know, a Brighton second string or playing very little competitive football, Jim, to playing 3 games a week. I think that's hit him, as well as the positional
I think
issue.
there's also another big factor that he's apparently a huge fan. He's a huge Celtic fan. So he gets that. He knows what's at stake. And he's played in games where the performances from the team and possibly himself haven't been that good. And we've just lost 2 games. And he must have been so looking forward to the game last week, albeit no fans. But this was going to be like the big game. And if he is a big fan of the club, he must have been, you know, as a young kid thinking, I'd love to play in that game. And to have played so poorly and to have, you know, let people down, he must have been devastated last week. And as I said, he took to social media to say, I'm big enough, not good enough to say, you know, I didn't play well enough today. So maybe he's a bit anxious because he knows what's at stake. Maybe he's more anxious than some other players who maybe have been there for 2 or 3 years but don't think the 10 is such an important thing. And as we said previously, the 10 is kind of holding us back a wee bit. Everything's to do with the 10, because I think that we should be looking long term. And, you know, and there's obviously a lot of kind of rumours going about social media. Most of it's mince, I would imagine. But I think the likes of Dermot Desmond or Peter Law should be looking for a new manager, not to replace Neil Lennon this season, but for a 5-year plan or for a 10-year plan. You should always be thinking, what happens next? Because if we do the 10, will Lenny stay on? Will he go? Well, you need to make sure that if it comes to that and Lenny does want to go, or he's pushed, or whatever happens, if Lenny's not here next year, who's the manager next year? And you can't wait till next May to then figure out that's what's going to happen. So we need a 5-year or a 10-year plan that says this is how we're going to go. And if and when Lenny leaves, and if he doesn't leave because we've won 10 in a row, brilliant. And even if he stays, fine. But one must assume that the Dermot Desmonds of this world must have some sort of plans going forward over the next few years, where we want the club to be, what kind of manager do we think is going to take the club forward over the next few years. That might be Lenny, it might not be Lenny, but you need to have that in place. You need to know what you're going to do. Yeah.
When you are one of these men with influence at Celtic and you're looking at this current situation, and I think everybody would be accused of overreacting. It's 1 defeat, it's 2 defeats. I think this season though, Jim, and looking at it as balanced as possible, with a balanced viewpoint, it's not just been about those 2 results. I think that the performances all season, and it, you know, perhaps with the exception of the Hibs game, have been less than inspiring. Now, I totally subscribe to what you say about when it comes down to it. Yes, I would love to be playing the fast, flowing, attractive football that Celtic are known for. I'd love that, and that would be brilliant. The priority is always a win, right? So I'm going to use an example, and I'm not comparing the managers, but you look at Scotland for years and years and years, constantly, we would say underachieving if you look back at the times where we were, qualifying for finals. Stevie Clark starts getting results, totally uninspiring to watch, but he's getting results now. So the results are key. And then obviously with Celtic, and with their budget and the magnitude of Celtic's budget compared to other clubs in our domestic setup, you would then hope to be doing it with some style. You would hope to be doing it to build something in Europe. So this season, it's been poor performances and grinding out results against the likes of St Mirren or Livingston, a late winner against Dundee United, 2 late goals against St Johnstone. So the nature of the performances haven't been there, but there's no big crisis because we're getting the results.
Points on the board.
Ferencváros, terrible result. Not for the first time in Europe under Neil Lennon. So there was a situation this morning where Neil Lennon has actually compared a result last season to where we are now. We got beat off Livingston 2-0. There's nothing to panic about. I think this is a little bit different, where you're getting beat off your main challengers at home in one of the most uninspiring performances in my living memory. But the actual performances this season have been fairly uninspiring. We've steamroller teams through maybe having that depth of squad, maybe being able to bring on players to make the change, i.e. St Johnstone. You look at the changes there. Yeah. So, I don't think it's an overreaction. I think that, if we get to the point where we're not reacting the way we are, do you then go another defeat? Do you go another few weeks? Do the performances improve at all?
I wouldn't disagree with anything that you've said there. I think, as I said earlier, I think if Lenny knows how to fix this and he goes about fixing it, then fine. If he's not sure how to fix it, then you would really have to change that. I also look at the players we have at the moment, and you talked about kind of fast, exciting football. Who's going to give you fast, exciting football? Well, people who can take players on. Mm-hmm. Who do we have that can do that? James Forrest, he's out injured for a while. Mikey Johnson is out injured. Jeremy Frimpong. Apart from that, who actually takes players on? Ryan Christie, maybe, but he's a different kind of player. So you actually need players who can take players on. And our rivals across the city, a lot of their success, they've got maybe 3 or 4 guys that can play in the team who take players on and make things happen. So maybe we don't have the kind of players to play that kind of football. I've said before, and I'll stick by it, I think Lee's the kind of main guy for me. I think if we can get Lee fit, and I play Lee again on Sunday, if we get Lee fit and we get Eddie back, then the options just multiply by a big number. And we get James Forrest back and maybe Mikey Johnson in there. Those are the flair players. If we get them back, then hopefully things will change. But we need to deal with the kind of now, and the now is Sunday. Mm-hmm. So Lenny has to have a team that goes up there and puts on a performance and wins the game. If we don't win on Sunday, then the whole thing just, gets much, much worse, intensifies. But what is he doing to try and make things better? What is his coaching staff doing to make things better? And again, as I've said to you in weeks gone by, we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm assuming from what I've read that Neil's a bit of a kind of Martin O'Neill type manager. Doesn't take the training, doesn't deal with the tactics. He's a kind of man manager, inspirational guy, signs the players hopefully. So the coaching's then done by John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan. How good are they? Don't know. Compared to maybe what we had under the previous manager, maybe that's a different level altogether. So there's some questions to be asked. So we don't know the answers to those questions, but the performances would tend to indicate something's wrong somewhere, and we need to try and change that, albeit we're missing loads of players.
We absolutely are, Jim, and I'm glad you brought up the rumour mill that has gone into overdrive. And I think there is a feeling that people panic after a defeat. It's disappointing after a defeat. I don't think there's panic, but I also don't think you can then just discard everybody's points of view. And I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking about don't panic, with regards to the fact that we've got a great squad. We're looking at a situation at the moment where, yes, we are several key men down, several entertaining creative players down due to illness and injury. And our challenges aren't really dealing with that situation. We are. But when you're looking at the players, for example, who came on last night, I think what that shows you is we still have the type of players you can come on to make a positive difference to the team now. When I'm looking at Christie, for me, he is the most creative player Celtic have. Yeah. The reason he never started last night is down to the player, the fitness, the fact that he's been isolated and therefore the training hasn't been as intense, I would guess. Rogic, absolutely thought he was on his way out, thought he was gone, we'd never see the big man again in a Celtic jersey. What I've seen against St Johnstone, what I've seen last night, gives me hope that there's an option we didn't think we were going to have, Jim. And I hope it is, because, we're looking at past glories. He's only 28. It's not as though he's 34 and you're not going to get a tune out of him. So there's another option. El Yunusi comes in, a player that I have championed all season and who has let me down and been pretty disappointing. He comes in after the disappointment of his performance against Rangers and he does the job last night. And as you say, all it takes is for another 2 or 3 of the players who are out to come back in. But even with the players fit, previous to the illness, previous to Jamesy Forrest's injury, previous to Julien's injury, it was uninspiring. That's where the concern comes in now. On a Celtic State of Mind, what I want to avoid, Jim, is, just spreading rumours. Like everybody else, you get the texts, people share things in WhatsApp groups. I've read them all, and you hear about players, you hear about cliques, you hear about the manager and lifestyles and all that stuff. We're not going to spread any of that on a Celtic State of Mind. What I'm looking at is the performance, the manner of the performances, and how things can be changed. Now, if you've got a manager there who watches the Rangers game, doesn't change it. You know within 15 minutes it's not working, you change it. And I don't always mean a tranche of substitutes coming on. Change the shape if the shape's not working. So last night we lined up with the same shape, and ultimately, barring the two forwards, with the same personnel. Did that surprise you last night?
It surprised me we didn't go to the back four. I thought we'd have played 4-5-1 last night, given the quality of the opposition. But then we get in the first 15 minutes, you think this is actually quite good in terms of how we're playing. But as soon as they score the goal, you know you're never going to come back from that. I liked the idea of playing two strikers up front when it actually happened, because I thought this is a big risk, but in actual fact they looked quite good. So again, really just enthusiastic amateurs. One of the things that was on social media that's going to be worth mentioning was the fact that it seems to be after the defeat last week, Desmond had a Zoom call with Peter Law and Neil Lennon and kind of waved a kind of metaphorical yellow card towards Lenny, like, go and sort this out. And that's how I feel. Something's wrong and it has to be sorted out. So we need to sort it out as quickly as possible. And as long as Lenny does that, then that's, as far as I'm concerned, then that's absolutely fine. But he has to find that shape. You mentioned a few players there who are coming back. We need to find a shape for them to play in so that they're in the team. So if Big Tom Roddick's going to play in the team, what's your formation that gets the best out of him? Where's he going to play? You're going to play him and Ryan Christie as well. They're a wee bit similar.
Yeah, can you?
So can you do that?
Yep.
Who are you going to play wide? The big positive in the last two games has been a left wing back, a left 100%. Back result.
Yeah.
I mean, here's somebody who's played for AC Milan, Uruguay international, was selected for the best team in the 2018 World Cup. He's got the best pedigree of any player in Scottish football, and I thought he was great last night. Head up all the time,
aggressive,
forward the time, aggressive, puts a good ball in, took players on, took responsibility. I thought he was great.
Yeah,
last
I
night.
agree with that.
So that's been a bit of a find. So there's going to be certain players you say, well, you have to play him and have to play him and have to play him. So what's the shape if you're saying we're going to have to play these guys? So you'd love to play James Forrest and Tom Roddick and Ryan Christie. Cham, for me, the jury's still out. I think in Europe maybe he gets a bit more time on the ball and looks better. Is he playing in the right position? When Scott Brown came off last night, he then played the Scott Brown role and he played really well. Is that because he got a bit more time on the ball? Because if you're at Ross County or St Johnstone, they're kicking you off the park, and maybe he's not up for that. Maybe he's not up for that. So what's our best team? So who's our best players? What's the best formation? Get it sorted out and off we go. And things should be okay, because we've got better players than every other team, including the team we played last week. So we should be playing better and we should be winning games. And before the game last week, we played 9 games, won 8, drew 1 game. That's pretty good. We've lost last week. I don't think Europe is a big thing for us this year. It'd be good to go and do well. I think I said last week, it's actually farcical we're actually playing European games, home and away. For me, that's just a nonsense. So Europe's all about doing okay, not getting a doing, hopefully putting in 1 or 2 performances, getting some players some sort of match fitness. But the 10, as I said earlier, kind of overshadows everything. So we need to get it right for the league games, even the cup game next week. I'm not that fussed because it all seems a bit bizarre. This is last year's cup semi-final. And
the most bizarre thing about that, you're right, because personnel changes, and you were part of a team last season and you maybe played in various rounds for a different team, and yeah, it does become a bit bizarre. But I must admit, I would love to wrap up the treble from last season as well.
Absolutely. I mean, another big historical thing to have won the 4th treble would be fantastic. It wouldn't make up for not doing the 10, but it would be a big thing. So we have to figure out overall, if everyone's fit and raring to go, then what's the best team in the best formation. And they might not necessarily be the best players, because, as we said earlier, if you're going to play 2 at the back and a back 4, and your choices between Julian, Ayer and Duffy, those are 3 very, very, very good players. But maybe one of them has to miss out, because unless you play 3 centre-backs, and if we say, well, 3 at the back doesn't work, you need to play the best shape. So if 4 at the back's best, do you play Ayer at right back maybe? Because I like big El Hamed. He's a brilliant player. For a big guy, he's really, really
so
good feet.
Composed, yep.
I'd play him at right back. He'd been my right back, like Zolt would be my left back. And at the current moment in time, if Big Julian was fit, you would maybe err on Big Julian and Ayer. Unless the Shane Duffy situation is he's still to get fit, he's still to find his way in this league. So there's an issue. Do you go 4-3-3, 4-4-2? Where do you go? What's the best choice? You'd like to go Eddie and Lee up front again, for me.
Well, I was going to ask you that,
so
last season.
Back, then, I mean, as I said previously on this, Lee won the league last year. It was Lee Griffiths coming back. He was the only difference last year between the first half of the season.
Breathed a bit of life into Eddie as well, Jim.
He was the first half of the season. He was the difference between the first half and the second half. And you can see, well, it was 3-5-2, but it was Lee Griffiths. Because if you played Bio in 3-5-2 or Polish Paddy in 3-5-2, it wouldn't have an impact with Lee Griffiths up there.
Bio.
So Lee made the difference for me. So what's my best team? It's got Lee and Eddie up front, and we're now saying there's 4 at the back. Okay, so is that now 4-4-2? Is that 4-3-1-2? What combination is your best combination?
To then get the best out of Ryan Christie.
The best out of these players. And then you mentioned young David Turnbull. He doesn't get in the team, basically, for me. If we're picking our best 11 and we stick with that, he's not in the first 11. Can't be in the first 11 unless he gets a couple of games and shines, and all of a sudden we've got a situation that we had a few years ago when Ryan Christie came into the team and just all of a sudden shone,
and he's got to play, and
you couldn't leave him out. So unless something like that happens to David Turnbull, good player he is, I think we've got such a strong squad and so many good players. I mean, we've got 7-8 players to come back.
We do. Now I'm going to ask you here, because you've mentioned 2 players I want to highlight. The first one being Cham, and again, I don't think anybody would disagree that technically he is one of the finest players in the country. However, we don't see that as often as we might. Last night, when the team was named and he started, I was surprised due to his poor performance against Rangers. I was very critical of him, Frimpong and El Yunusi. I mean, as a team, we didn't perform well, but they 3 players I thought were particularly poor on Saturday. Now, on 21 minutes, and Cham looked in the mood from the kick-off, I've got to say. Last night, he was playing in a position, Jim, where he was almost backing up or doubling up with Frimpong. And there was a moment, there was one in the first half, one in the second half, on 21 minutes, where he played a cross-field pass to the aforeferenced Laxalt that no one else on the park could have played. It was a genius bit of football. And he'd done the same thing on 57 minutes to the same player across the field of play. Now, I don't know if it is all about the nature of that game, the style and speed of the European game suiting him better, but he did look like a different player last night than the one we've seen turning up on Saturday. The flip side of that is you were naming almost your best 11 there, and I'm guessing that the captain is in it. On last night's performance, we were a better team without Bruni. Now, is that even a consideration for Lenny? Was Lenny bringing him off with Sunday in mind? Yes. Do you go into a game against Pittodrie without the captain?
No, you don't. I mean, I said to you, I thought he took off Scott Brown to keep him for Sunday, because he's been playing loads of games. You can't go to Pittodrie without your captain, I think. It's different if you're going to some of the smaller teams. I don't have an issue with them not playing all the games. But I think for Sunday and the kind of battle that's going to be, you need Scott Brown there on Sunday. If we're playing St Johnstone at home or something like that, that's not a big deal. So I thought he took him off with that game in mind. As far as Cham's concerned, I think I heard one of your guests last Saturday calling him an empty jersey last Saturday. And I was really surprised because, as I think I said before, I think he'll be in January. That's my kind of gut feel, because I don't think he'll be a regular starter. And I think if you're not a regular starter and you're sub, as I said earlier, you can't be happy. And I don't think he'll be a regular starter. I think he'll go. And I think last Saturday, that's the biggest game in the Scottish calendar. I thought that's the game he's going to show what a good player he was. It didn't happen. Last night, he might have been thinking, if I'm moving, this is the kind of game that's going to be shown around Europe. We're playing AC Milan, Big Zlatan and the rest of them. If I put a performance in Pure, this will put me in the shop window. So there might be a wee bit of that last night. As I said earlier, I think Europe probably suits him a bit better than the hurly-burly of getting kicked all over the park at Tannadice or whatever. You know, so... And yes, maybe he's not playing in the right position, and his position is maybe is the Scott Brown position.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Lenny has to manage Scott Brown this season. I still think he's a fantastic player. He's a tremendous leader. And it's going back to that bit of again. Lenny's got the 10 in his hands, and he has to deal with all these variables and all these kind of factors. And he's got so many good players. He's got so many permutations. You know, you said last week about sometimes he's got a tendency to throw a curveball. You know, so he's got loads of curveballs he could throw. Mikey Johnson's a curveball. Young Dembele's a curveball. Turnbull could be a curveball. You know, there's loads of options. So, but he really needs to have to, you know, pin down what's my best shape, best formation, and what are the players that fit into that, and let's just go with that and let's just stick to that. So if somebody's coming in, they're coming in for that position. So if you're going to rest Scott Brown for Hamilton, he's at home, then Cham's coming in and playing that position. And we're not changing it too much. Subject to injuries, again, and it's not an excuse, it's a fact. We've got more than half a team out of quality players. So once they're all back, and maybe too late, once they're all back, depending on the next few results. But that's one of these things. And I also said before about people who've got COVID, that we're quite blasé. You know, we talked last week, well, Eddie on the bench, you know, give us 20 minutes. It's really bad, apparently, with Eddie. We don't know when he's going to be back. So that could be the same with big Neil Bitton and El Hamid and stuff like that. And more people will get this as well. So that's going to make things difficult. And these are the bits that we can't control. And I said that earlier. I don't have any issues. I think if we play the 38-game season, we'll have enough opportunities to get this back. If they call the league earlier, we might not get the opportunity to get this back. Because what happened last year, we never get the chance to play the last two Glasgow derbies. So if that happened this year, then the game at Ibrox in New Year is like, that's the game for 10. That's the big game. So hopefully we play all the games and there's enough games to let us get that back. And I wouldn't be panicking just now, because if we win the game in hand, albeit it's Aberdeen at home, then we're within a point. So let's just keep winning the games. Let's just, you know, go out there, show how good a team we are, win the games, keep clawing away at it, keep within 1 point, keep on their backs, you know, because they might crack again. Who knows?
I think this is the one thing. We did see it last season, Jim. We do have the depth of squad to make changes. We have options. I don't think, and I'm not going to focus on our opposition because that's not what we're all about, but we're talking about them if we're playing them or if we're talking about our nearest challengers. But I don't think they have the same options that Neil Lennon's got with the depth of squad. I don't think they'll have the same options come January should something have to be done to, you know, shore up the defence, for example. If Celtic had to do it and we had to go out and get someone, you know, I've got confidence we could still do that.
Absolutely. But if you to take the equivalent of who we've lost over the other side of the city, you know, they would be completely decimated. Decimated.
I know, they'd be playing the kids. Absolutely.
They'd be playing kids. So that's a big factor as well. So you have to kind of bear that in mind, that we're all a bit, you know, obviously raw about, we've lost 2 games, lost to our main rivals last week. It's a disaster, etc., etc. Before that, we'd won 8, drew 1. It was kind of okay, albeit performances weren't that good. We're still well in this. We won the game in hand. It's within a point. Just keep breathing down their necks. Let's get it together. Let's sort out the team shape and let's, you know, be a bit more positive and move on. But if we don't do that, then that's a completely different scenario altogether.
We'll talk differently next week if we don't do that. But Jim, what I would like to say, there's a couple of other points I'm going to make, and it's going to be good to get your take on them before we start speaking to people who are listening in and viewing us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. The first one is, when you're looking at the substitutions that were made last night, we're looking at 3 players in Christie, Rogic and El Yunusi, who came on and performed particularly well. I would suggest El Yunusi scores the goal. That's set up by Christie. Brilliant to see Big Tam Rogic looking like Tommy Rogic again, you know. Brilliant to see him performing. I don't see Rogic starting against Aberdeen despite his history with the club. Who of the 3 do you think is on that starting lineup on Sunday?
Ryan Christie, of course. Ryan Christie, goes without saying. As you said earlier, he's been the most dynamic player all season. He'll make things happen. You have to make things happen. What was disappointing about the second half last Saturday is nobody made anything happen. In fact, the one person that made things happen was Big Ayer. And it was the only time in that 90 minutes that somebody took somebody on. And he drove up the park. And the thing about Lee Griffiths is Lee Griffiths not only makes runs, he knows the runs to make. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in the first half, Polish Paddy, he was running about daft.
He wasn't stretching the defence.
He wasn't stretching the defence. He was going in the wrong places. So you bring on somebody like Lee Griffiths, who's got the nous and the experience
and the instinct.
To know when to make the runs, where to make the runs. And if you notice that he got in front of the defender who couldn't touch him, and he opened the whole thing up. And I think if the goalkeeper had been maybe a few yards back, he'd have got a shot away there. And that was the one bit of really good play, because somebody took somebody on.
Yeah.
And that's what Ryan Christie does. And he'll take shots at goals. And although it may be quite frustrating when he hits the ball 10 yards over the bar, but if you don't shoot, you don't score. I'd much rather with more players in the team like that. We don't shoot often enough. And it annoys me when we do shoot, usually the quality's pretty poor. Cham's the worst for this. In terms of, with that chance in the last couple of minutes and he pulled the thing wide, that annoys the hell out of me. Because, again, these are guys who train every week to be in that position, to have the composure, the skill. Mm-hmm. You know, just get it in target. Not even get it in target, get it in target and make the goalkeeper work. I mean, how many shots do you see that go in target that go straight to the goalkeeper? You think, if you're doing this day in and day out, and when it comes to match day, you should be shooting, you should be getting on target, you should be making the goalkeeper work. You shouldn't be pulling the ball 10 yards by the post or 10 yards over the bar like the chance we had last week. So that annoys me. But we should be shooting a lot more. Lee does this all the time.
And Christie does as well.
Christie does it all the time.
Yep.
Eddie maybe not so much so. So I'm trying to think who else has a pot. Tom Rodgick has a pot.
Well, McGregor does, but he's playing too deep at the moment, isn't he? You know, I look at Christie, and when I give you the three, I knew instantly you would say Ryan Christie, because week in, week out, he's like the first name on my team sheet. But people do criticise him for his corners, for his free kicks, and often for some of the wild nature of his shooting. But when you look at just the second half of Christie last night, on seven occasions, he did something that created a chance. He was creative, be that setting someone up or taking a shot himself. Now, some of the shots come to nothing, some of the crosses come to nothing, but he's making them work, he's making them think, he's pulling people and dragging folk out of position, Jim, and he's creating space for others in doing so. And ultimately, he created the goal. We were in a situation last night, the Encham miss that you're speaking about, we're going for a 2-2 at that point, when Frimpong hits the byline and fails to do what he done against Riga and find a man. We're going for 2-2. And then, of course, that sucker punch at the end makes the scoreline look like a comfortable one. Mm-hmm. If you were to compare the second half to the first half, you might say overall it was a comfortable victory. But in the second half, Jim, we were going for 2-2. I'm trying to pull out some positives. Laxalt was a positive. Christie was a positive. Even El Yunusi, for me, was very disappointing Saturdays. Come on, that's going to work for his confidence, getting a goal.
Cham was a positive,
Absolutely, yeah, he was. Now, the other thing I'm going to say to you, and with your knowledge of years gone by, we're going to flip it a bit. We're going to flip the situation a wee bit, where we were trying to prevent a Rangers side back in 97-98 from winning 10 titles in a row. We were going for our first title in 10 years. And at that time, you know, and it's only clear now, Jim, that the managerial appointment of Wim Jansen was done in such a way that Fergus McCann tried to take away the romanticism from the manager. The committed manager that was Tommy Burns, and it meant so much to Tommy to win the league first and foremost. But he knew the importance of the 10. To our challengers at that time. And in fact, it was Fergus McCann's belief, according to Jock Brown, that it meant too much to Tommy, and he got too emotionally attached to the task in hand. And one of the criteria when appointing a manager was it's got to be a non-British manager. Mm-hmm. Now, he did that in appointing Wim Jansen. He did it again when he appointed Dr. Joseph Venglos. Now, when you're looking at the current situation, could we be looking at a similar scenario where Neil Lenny, it becomes too much for him as a manager? Now, that gives me a situation that I didn't want to be facing, Jim, because I don't think bringing anybody new in, and there's been loads of talk this week of this, I don't think that is just a magic wand. You bring someone else in.
Well, that's what annoys me. You know, if Neil Lennon is not up to the job for whatever reason at all, and people are clamouring for him to go, who comes in? And some of the names I've seen, you think, really? Is that who you're saying? And what happens if they don't win the league? Whose fault's that? So one of the names that was mentioned, I mean, I think Lenny will turn it around. Right? So this is just for the sake of discussion. Right?
And by the way, you're not one of these guys, Jim, who just says, Lenny, stand by him. You know, I think we spoke beforehand, and you've got your concerns as well.
I think Lenny will solve the problems, and if he can't solve the problems, he'd be the first to admit, I can't solve these, for whatever it is, because it's also the fact, I mean, Lenny's a bit old school, he's a bit Martin O'Neill-ish, you know, and you're dealing with players that have got a whole different mindset these days. Now, the majority of the players that are playing for Celtic just now are not that bothered about the 10. It'd be great if it happened, but really they're not that bothered. Shane Duffy, yeah. Scott Brown, Forrest, Callum McGregor, yeah, but you're not telling me that, you know, Cham's that first at the end of the day. He'd love to win it, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, it's not going to be devastating for him the way it is going for a lot of fans. So Neil's a bit old school, and Martin O'Neill's a bit old school. So maybe old school's not working for the sake of discussion. Say it's not working. And one of the names that was mentioned was Eddie Howe. I said, well, bring in Eddie Howe. And you think, well, what has Eddie Howe done? And you think, well, from my limited knowledge of English football, I know he's done really well with Bournemouth. I know he's brought them up from the Championship, and he kept him in the league for 4 or 5 seasons, something like that. But he gets sacked at the end of the season there, and he's not got a job. So if he's that highly rated, why is he not in a job? And I thought, well, I better actually maybe do a bit of digging. I'm coming on here, so it sounds as if I know what I'm talking about. So what's Eddie Howe's managerial life so far? He was a player coach of Bournemouth. He got the Bournemouth gig. He brought them up from the 4th tier to the 3rd tier. He got offered the Burnley gig, who were in the Championship. He came in the January, finished the season 8th, had a whole season, finished 13th, and 3 months into the next season, he left due to personal reasons to go back to Bournemouth, a club that he, you know. And I'm not saying anything against Eddie Howe, don't get me wrong. He's a very good man. He's done really, really well. But Bournemouth and Burnley, I don't view them as, and no disrespect to their fans if anyone's listening, you know, I think Dundee are a bigger team, or Dunfermline are a bigger team in football context. I mean, they might have millions of money because of the bizarre league they're in, but I think Dundee are a bigger team than Bournemouth, or Dunfermline are a bigger team than Burnley. So that's the teams he's managed. He's managed, you know, teams that are not getting big crowds. Imagine coming up to the Glasgow Goldfish Bowl against Stevie G and the juggernaut that's over there that's meant to be. And if he fails, because he's only got, you know, 2/3 of a season or 3/4 of a season or something like that. So be careful what you wish for, you know. And you go for this short-term fix. I don't feel comfortable doing this because I think Lenny will turn it around. And if he doesn't turn it around, he'll be the first to put his hands up and say, it's not working. So maybe this is a conversation for another day if things end up going pear-shaped. But I don't think they will go pear-shaped. I think we'll win in Sunday fairly comfortably, even though Aberdeen are on a really good run just now. Well, go up there, you be positive, you put your best team out, better shape, just go at them, win the game, back down the road with 3 points, and just try and keep that going for the next few months. Go to Ibrox, win that game, we're in the lead again, and off you go. And I'm not trying to sound like kind of happy clapper, keep the faith and all this kind of stuff. Keep the faith to me is all about, if something's going wrong, why is it going wrong? Let's fix it, and let's move on, and let's be positive, and let's back each other, and let's go for it. And one of the things, obviously the fact there's no fans at the game, I mean, the team would be getting pelters just now at the end of the games, you know, and that wouldn't do a lot for their confidence. So at least they're getting spared that. So let's be positive and let's hope we can turn this around. At the end of the day, we're really only maybe 1 point behind at this point in time. So let's not, and notwithstanding the level of performances and all the noise that's kind of going around the thing. Totally get that at all. This is a big season, so let's not, you know, panic at this point in time. Let's just try and keep it positive. But if we don't get the 3 points on Sunday, that's a whole different conversation.
Well, we will be talking about that next Friday. Now, there are plenty of comments coming through, and ever since Celtic started losing a couple of games, obviously the monitoring of said comments has been a fairly tricky exercise in itself. But rest assured, all the regulars, that we are going through them either live or after the show to try and root out anybody who's just coming in to agitate the situation. Now, Darren G via YouTube is saying it definitely changed the players not the formation. There was a few games when 3-5-2 looked great last season. I think that was down to teams not being used to defending that formation with two up top. Now, we've obviously spoken about the personnel. I think we're a stronger squad this season than we were last season. It's been decimated though, Jim, and you've made that point really well. It has been decimated. And I think it would be fantastic in an ideal world to be able to call on your entire squad. It's not really been the case at all this season. But regardless, Neil Lennon's going to have to deal with the players that we've got until he gets it right.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to talk about shapes and formation quite a lot. It's down to the players at the end of the day, I think. The players are there. Just figure out how best to utilise those players. And at the risk of repeating myself again, that we have got the best players of any other team in the country. Mm-hmm. So we need to reflect that on the park. And Lenny has to figure out how to do that. It sounds dead obvious. But there's going to be lots of other noise going on within Celtic Park that we don't know about in terms of backroom staff and coaching and training and COVID and everything else that's going out there. So who knows what's going on? But just, we have the best players. Therefore, let's go and show it.
Now, you're right. Who knows? And that's why we try not to throw fuel to the fire, Jim, when it comes to all these rumours. Everybody knows. Everybody gets the team line sent to them. Everybody gets these rumours every time there's a bad result. And, we try not to feed it into that. What I'm saying with regards to things aren't right at the moment, it's down to the performances, it's down to the manner in which we've been defeated. And it's the manner in which we've scraped through some of the games. I made a point yesterday, Jim, and it was all around the types of player that we're bringing into the club and the change in culture between the Brendan Rodgers era compared to the era that we're currently in, Neil Lennon Mark II, and the types of player that Brendan Rodgers could manage quite confidently. And whether or not there's a group of players that don't, react well to Neil Lennon's style. I think that's something that, it's a discussion point. It could well be. I have no doubt that certain players play for certain managers. Are some of our top class players not suited to Neil Lennon's style?
That could be a factor. And I said maybe Neil's a bit old school with some of this stuff. And the thing about if you've got a squad of however size the squad is, 24 first team players, whatever, all with different personalities, different nationalities, it's a bit of a challenge having to manage that. It's not like the old days where Lisbon Lions and everyone's from 30 miles to Glasgow and they're all pulling the same direction and they're all getting paid the same. It's not very much money. You having to deal with that. You having to deal with 24 players, trying to get the optimum, get the best out of those 24 players. That's a huge challenge. And deal with the media as well. And trying to keep a lid on lots of stuff. Mm-hmm. And you said these leaks are coming out. That's not good. So somebody's undermining them by doing that.
Absolutely.
And that's what I said before about if something's not going right, find out why it's not going right and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
eradicate it.
Goodness knows what this leak thing is about. What if it was one of the established first team players that's just trying to undermine the manager? I mean, that'd be shocking if something like that happened, as opposed to some some backroom member of staff that's maybe that's
if it's a disgruntled player, then absolutely.
I think if it's something like that, then that's really serious. If it's one of the main players, that's really serious. But for that size of squad, 24, and obviously all managers have to deal with that. But this of all seasons where the 10 is in Lenny's hands, and he's having to pick the right players. Sorry, not the best, the right players for the games and get things right. And he's got millions of eyes watching him every single day. It's not even match days. Every single day, what he's saying. Every time he comes in front of the media, he has to be so guarded in terms of what he actually says.
No, you do, because every word is
the nuance. It's like, well, did he mean by that? And
I know. And I mean, we do it on the show. We look at what Lenny said after a game, and we start, picking it apart. Yeah. And of course, Jim, as well, everything we say ends up as a meme on the Rangers website because they've got nothing better to do with their time. They're not used to being at the top of the league. They don't know how to enjoy it.
Which is absolutely fair enough. You don't have a big issue. I mean,
I just laugh at it.
The issue is that if we don't succeed this year, it'll be our fault. And it's been said a number of times, the only team that will beat Celtic this year is Celtic. As one of your guests said a few days ago, we're doing a hell of a job. We're doing a hell of a job. We're doing really well to beat
trying
ourselves.
our best at it. Yeah,
trying our best to beat ourselves.
One thing I would say again, that I'm keen to get through a few of these points that are coming through, because it's always great to engage with those who are listening in. The leak, or is it leaks? Because when you think back to the transfer sheet, after a meeting, the transfer sheet was photographed and shared widely.
Yeah,
that's by an employee of the club.
Aye,
so it's still continuing. So how widespread is it? That's a massive issue that obviously the club are dealing with.
Yeah.
They dealt with it the last time. They identified who was responsible, and they dealt with the situation. So when you're a Celtic manager, though, and this is the reason I'm bringing this up, you take the job on. You know how big it is. You know what the expectations are. But you also know that you're going to have to be dealing with things away from the football. So you look at Ronnie Dyler. He had to deal with mutiny in the camp with the senior pros. You then move into Brendan Rodgers territory, who's dealing with players who are down in tools, i.e. Boyata, Dembele to a degree, engineering moves via social media. And then you are Neil Lennon coming into the club. You're dealing with the leaked transfer targets. You're dealing with the leaked teams. You're dealing with players who are going to French media outlets and saying, I don't want to play in Scottish football. So that's part of the territory as well, though, Jim, isn't it? When you take the job, you know that's part of the job.
Yeah, but I mean, once upon a time, you'd managers like Jock Stein, like Alec Ferguson, who knew everything that was happening in the club. And because things are so... There's a football division here and maybe a financial division there, and they're all split into different component parts. So a lot of these guys might have access to that kind of information as well. We have to get to the root of this kind of stuff. So if it's a first team player that's undermining Neil Lennon, he has to go. Basically, you can't put up with that. So it's about finding the problems. What are the problems? And as you said, there might not be football problems. Maybe other issues there. So we need to get to the bottom of these problems and solve the problems. I mean, if Lenny's sitting with his feet up doing nothing, that's an issue. I don't think he's sitting with his feet up doing nothing. I think he's trying to do the very, very best that he can to achieve 10 in a row. If he's not doing that, he shouldn't be there. So I firmly believe that's what he's doing. If people aren't helping him, we need to find out who they are and get rid of them as soon as we can. That's non-football stuff. On the football side of the things, just get the best team and the best formation on the park and be positive and let's start clawing this back and moving forward. Another thing, I mean, this might sound a bit odd, but when you do win things and you think it's an achievement to win things, it's good to win it when pushed all the way. So here's a choice I'll give you. Would you rather that our main challengers completely collapsed and they lost 12 points in the next few games and we stroll to 10 in a row, right? Is that as good an achievement as when pushed all the way and win it in the last day of the season? Say, obviously we didn't do much for your heart, but that would be a huge achievement. And what happened last season was that our main challengers just collapsed. Now we had to win the game, we had to put the points on the board, and it was deserved, absolutely deserved, but the main rivals chucked it a bit. So maybe it wasn't as big an achievement. But this year we're thinking if we do the 10 this year, given the level of performance across the city, that'll be a bigger achievement.
I prefer a competitive edge, Jim. I've got to say, I do, because I just think everything else improves. I think your performance in Europe improves. I think if you're going to have that tempo, you then go into a cup game and you're much more likely to get results elsewhere. And
that's why I enjoy when we're playing games in Europe. That's when I used to love going to the Champions League game under Gordon Strachan, because he thought a lot about the game, and it was like a game of chess. And I was mentally knackered at the end of a Champions League game, because you were looking at all the kind of permutations and you're thinking, don't make a mistake, give it to him, keep the ball. And if I was mentally knackered watching a game, what are the players going to be? Because those were real tests. If you beat AC Milan, which we did 2-1, that was huge. You beat Man United, those were huge. Beating Ross County 5-0, we should be beating Ross County 5-0. No disrespect to, it's 11v11 and all that kind of thing. You're never going to win games 5-0 all the time. But if we're playing Livingston or Hamilton, and if we don't beat those teams, there's something wrong. Now, once in a while, we're going to drop some points, and that's just the nature of the football, especially the Cup and that kind of stuff. But in terms of an achievement, I don't think anyone outside Scotland is bothered about the 10. It's two teams that are at each other's throats, and if we win 10, then, that's it forever. And if we don't win 10, it's not it forever. So, and that's spoiling things a wee bit. And I said last week, I think as well, that In fact, what's actually spoiling it more than that is the bounty for the Champions League. Because even if you said, you know what, let's just take a season and bring in a new manager, forward-thinking manager, no disrespect to Lenny, this is in a couple of years' time, say, foreign manager, new ideas, innovative, he's the next big manager, and he signs all these young guys, and we're great to watch, and we lose the league by 10 points, and don't get in the Champions League, and we lose the 30-40 million pound. Which one do you want? You know, which one do you want? Because you would like to have both, but it tends to be not having both. It's about winning games, and that's why a lot of the times the games maybe aren't that exciting. You're there to win some points, and would you rather play really, really well and lose, or play terribly and get the 3 points? And we're in this season where it's the season of the 10, and you're going to go for the latter. Just win the games, get the points, and come back up the road. That's exactly where we are just now. And I think even beyond the 10, whether we get the 10 or not, because of the Champions League bounty, I think it'd be hard to do that. We're not bothered about the league. You know.
And as well as losing that bounty, you know who's getting the bounty.
Aye. So it's a double. It's double, basically. You know, you lose, they get, and that swings. And that's why you get in the Champions League, you're plus 30 compared to the main rivals, and you're not in it, you're then minus 30. So there's a £60 million swing there. So, and that's what, again, money's coming into things. So it is what it is in terms of where we are. And I think we have to have that balancing act about, yes, we'd love to watch open attack. And in the second half of last season, we got both. You know, putting points on the board and playing really well, and it was great to watch. But the first half of last season was almost exactly the same as the first half of this season in terms of things that panned out. And that's not to say because it turned out good last season, it's going to turn out good this season. That's not the case. Not with a lot of work and a lot of effort by everyone. It's not just Neil Lennon, it's everyone there. And if all the players aren't pulling in the same direction, that's a big concern.
It is. It's a massive concern now. Stephen Ray's come on to say via YouTube, and if anybody's watching on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And he states that Brown came off because he was terrible. Time to bench him. I actually think we performed better without him last night, but you have seen the impact that he can make. You saw that not when he came on against Dundee United, but you saw the impact that he made against Dundee United and also against St Johnstone when he comes on as a sub, Jim. And that's why I posed the question at you. I think it is a consideration.
No, I think because of the game last night, we were on the front foot in most of the second half. So if you take away a defensive midfield player and put on a forward or an offensive player, we're going to look better. You can't leave Scott Brown out for playing at Pittodrie. Thereafter that, as I said, if we're playing St Johnstone or Hamilton or Ross County, knock yourself out. You know, you can easily miss those games. But it's going to be a battle on Sunday, as it normally is up there. And you want your captain to lead the battle. Mm-hmm. Do you play Cham instead of him? Given how poorly Cham has performed in domestic football this year, no, you don't. Or not for me, you don't. We're playing next week. Is it Leo next Thursday?
Yes. Yep.
You could play Cham then, leave out Scott Brown then. Don't have an issue with that at all. Because I'm not fussed about Europe. In fact, Cham plays better than Europe. And in fact, you could leave Scott behind then, so he doesn't have to travel. If you want to do that, don't have an issue with that. But you know, Aberdeen away next to Ibrox, that's the biggest challenge, and they've been playing really well, and they're up for it. And the thing I hadn't noticed, because I thought I better look at the league table before I come to, they're only 3 points behind us.
I know.
You know,
after
for all
Hamilton,
the, you know,
yep.
they get hammered by Motherwell, and they lost to Rangers on the first day of the season, and they were 0-0 last week against Dundee United. What it was, they're only 3 points behind. So we lose a game, then we're joint second, and that's the catch-up game as well. So we've got 2 games against them, and they'll be fancying their chances for what they've seen this week. I mean, going into a game where Celtic have lost 2 in the bounce, they'll be thinking their confidence is down. We're playing well, we're at home, scored 4 the other night, so it's going to be a tough game, and we need everyone who's up for the fight. And what was clearly shown last Saturday, there was a number of players who weren't up for the fight.
No, that was the biggest concern, Jim. Now,
and we need this season up for the fight.
Everybody. There can't be any empty jerseys.
No empty jerseys.
Now, quite a few people listening in have highlighted that someone came on and made a number of inappropriate comments, Jim, so I have taken that on board, and they've been blocked, and we'll continue to do that. That's just what we have to do. They've been quiet for about 10 years, but all of a sudden in the last fortnight we've heard a lot of racket and a lot of noise coming in from elsewhere.
That's fine. That's
fine. We need to tidy it up a wee bit. Now, Chick Cameron, welcome to the show, Chick. You're commenting on Facebook. Great to hear from you, sir. Scott Brown has lost half a yard. You get away with it in the Premier, but not in Europe. Interesting, because I thought he was poor last night. Remember Lustig's last season? Exactly the same as Brown. Promote him to player coach. That last point, Jim, let's leave this. This is a final point that I think we'll make today. Now, I've been looking at the dugout. I've been looking at the coaching staff. We spoke to Lawrence about this on Tuesday. He was of the view that Lenny should have his own team. You're looking at that. It does seem a bit fragmented. Now, I don't know how much of that is down to the fact that they can't be huddled together due to the restrictions, etc. But it does certainly seem like three individuals there, Gavin Stratton, John Kennedy, Neil Lennon. Now, what Chick has said there about Scott Brown, I think that is a natural progression for Scott Brown.
Yep.
Whether or not it can happen this season. But what I would say is, you put Scott Brown there on the bench, not literally at the moment because they're all sitting in the stand. He can still influence. He can still influence on the training pitch. He can still influence in the dressing room before a big game and the coach going to that game. And we've seen it previously with Tom Boyd and Paul Lambert. Is it, yes, he's not playing as well. He's not playing as well as we have seen previously. And in the last two games specifically, I can understand the risk removing him from the start lineup on Sunday, because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, depending on the result. Do you see at some point perhaps this season that happening? Not to the player coach, that might be more long term, but periods where he's on the bench.
I don't see him being a player coach this season, because that would just be an admission that everything's wrong. If all of a sudden you're making him a coach and you've got two coaches there, I think that would be, you've put your hands up, I can't cope with this. I can't see that happening this year. As I was talking earlier, it just suddenly occurred to me that maybe we should lead him out for European games and let Cham play the European game, because that would maybe kill two birds with one stone then, because Cham wants to play. So you say you're playing in Europe, and those are the games that are kind of people will be watching. So if you want to move on you go play in Europe, because maybe the domestic game isn't for you. That's not to say he doesn't play domestic games, but I think we just pick and choose which games that Scott Brown's going to play. And it is Hamilton at home and Livingston. But if you're going to Pittodrie or you're going to Easter Road, maybe not so much now because there's no crowds there, but those are the big games, those will be battles, and you need Scott Brown for the battles. That's it. You don't need Scott Brown for the games that we're going to dominate the ball, so you can miss those games out. Mm-hmm. And because of his age, you wouldn't expect him to be able to play as many games as we're playing. We're now playing weekend, midweek, weekend, Scottish Cup ties from last year, Europe, the whole kind of thing. You wouldn't expect him to play all these games. So I think absolutely just pick and choose the games that you maybe play him in, and maybe let him miss out in Europe, so he doesn't have to travel as well. That could be a kind of solution. But longer term, player coach, absolutely, as long as whoever the manager is at that point is happy to have him as a player coach, because the point the person made there is that you want your manager to pick their own backroom, and that's maybe not happened this time. Mm-hmm. And so who picks the backroom staff? And again, without going on a bit too much, that Lenny comes in and he was just kind of told, there's John Kennedy for you, and did Lenny appoint Gavin Strachan, or did that come from somewhere else? Again, we've got no idea how these things work. But for you or I, doing whatever job we're doing, if we were asked to assemble a team to do whatever job we do, and you were going to lead that team, then one would think that you get to pick the people who are part of your team. And if it wasn't working, you would replace the people in your team, because ultimately you're going to carry the can. So if we don't do the 10, the fingers will be pointing at Lenny. But if Lenny feels at any point in time that maybe the backroom staff aren't right, 1, 2, whatever, or players aren't right, or something's not right, that's his job to fix it. That's his job to identify what the issue is, and his job to fix it. And I'm confident that he will do that. But if he doesn't do that, then you would have to blame him for not sorting out the problems. You can't let these things fester. And you mentioned 97, 98 earlier, when we were trying to stop the 10. What happened across the roads in 97, 98? They were complacent. they didn't take action. And that's how, well, obviously we played well and we put points on the board, but they should have won that league. They should have won 10 in a row. And they'll still be kicking themselves that they didn't win 10 in a row because they were complacent. So if there's a problem, you need to deal with it. And I'm assuming that story about Dermot Desmond last week is true. I'm assuming that's true. And if it's true, good, because that's what I'd expect. Something's not working. You call the two guys in who are possibly responsible for it's not working, and you wave a yellow card at them to say, next time it's red, guys, unless you go and sort this stuff out.
Yeah.
So the manager's been backed in the transfer window. I said previously, astonished that we kept the guys we kept, astonished at the quality we brought in. The tools are there. The injuries, that's been unfortunate. And I don't believe if we had all those players fit, we wouldn't have had the performance we had last Saturday, and we'd possibly won the game last Saturday. So that's a huge factor. But if there are any issues just now, Lenny's the man to sort it. He has to go and sort those issues out, and we'll move on from there, and everyone pulling in the same direction. If there's issues there, and either he's not able to sort it, or he can't sort it, then that's a problem. Because we're assuming that he's the manager, and he is the manager obviously, but we're assuming he's got the powers to change certain things. What if he hasn't the power to change certain things? You then shift the finger of blame to someone else, whoever that may be, to say, hold on, he's telling you, if you want to achieve 10, you need to do X, Y and Z, and you're not letting me do X, Y and Z. So it's not enough. I'm going to carry the can. On social media there's going to be a zillion comments about this guy's, get rid of this guy, and my hands are tied. And that's a terrible position to be in. I'm not saying that's the case, sorry. I'm just talking. In terms of, we don't know what's happening. But if there's a problem there, and there obviously is a problem, is it a big problem or a small problem? Who knows? But identify it and deal with it. And let's try and move on, all pulling in the same direction, and let's keep positive, because we do have the best players.
Oh, without a doubt.
Stick them on the park, win the games, and move on. And hopefully, in a month's time, we're through at the Scottish Cup final with a few decent performances in the Europa, and we're no worse than 1 point behind.
Even less than that, in a week's time, Jim, you'll be here again, and by that time we'll have played Aberdeen and Lille. And let's hope by that stage the mood has got a little bit brighter over the next week, because a week is a long time in football, Jim.
Yep.
And we've got some brilliant responses to the show today, so thanks everybody for getting in touch via Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. Just a reminder, get yourself subscribed on YouTube. We broadcast every single day, even on our days off, so work that one out. And all that's left for me to say, as well as thanking all you guys for getting involved, is thank you to Jim Orr for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks, Paul.